you and I, per taxpayer, owe approximately $42,000. In Millennial Math today, we're going to talk about what's happening with that and what you are spending on that today. I'm surprised by what we've calculated out today, and you're going to be a little terrified of this. 2025, 2026, the Parliamentary Budgeting Officer is estimating, and this was just released, this report, $68.5 billion deficit. Now, this is without a budget being released by the Canadian government. So this number could be much higher, it could be lower, we don't know exactly. But, you know, federal debt is $1.35 trillion. Like a trillion's not a number I can even visualize in my head. But to have that kind of debt means you have to pay interest. And the expected interest is $55.3 billion in 25-26. Now that's a scary amount of money. I'm going to shift a little bit here to tell the whole story. We have taxable income ranges federally. So from $0 income to $57,375, you pay a 14.5 federal tax rate. We're not talking about provincial, we're not talking about other things that you might be paying. And if you made $57,375, you would in the end pay $8,319.38. These numbers, they shift every year. But in the end, you know, somebody who made $353,414 would pay a 25.9% effective rate and a total amount of $91,000 of tax. Well, that's a lot of tax, but, you know, these are the brackets that we work with. Now, if we apply directly to the amount of money we have to spend on debt, so that $55 billion, because we have to pay that every year. You can't just not pay the interest. Imagine you're not paying your mortgage, right? You gotta pay your mortgage down. Here's the contribution that each person will make. We did a calculation based on the population at the end of 2024 in Canada, and we did equal debt servicing, okay? So everybody owes the same amount, whether you make $57,000 a year or $353,000. And you know, it kind of coincides with this, right? $42,000 is what you, as a taxpayer, owe. $1,183 this year has to go to pay that debt from every Canadian, okay? And that's just assuming every Canadian makes money, which we know doesn't happen. We know that some people will pay more, but if you're making $57,000 in the year, you can estimate that 14.2% of the taxes you give the federal government will go to service the debt, your contribution of the debt. And it's important to understand that if you have a family of 4, for example, and you're the only person making money there, your contribution is 4 times this amount. These are obviously not directly relatable amounts, but that's what you essentially are contributing as a Canadian taxpayer. And this situation starts to get really scary if we project out a few years. The Parliamentary Budget Officer also put out this report, and they're showing, okay, it's $82.4 billion in 2030-31. That's what we would have to pay for interest on the debt, assuming all of these budgetary imbalances. They say balance, I would call this an imbalance. When I projected that out, okay, I took the population values from StatsCan. You can see them right here. Some of the values, some of the scenarios you could argue about Okay, maybe we can go up or down. And you know what? I don't think they're really taking into account the amount of people we're bringing into the country. So we could totally talk about these values. But if we just kept the population growing in one of their scenarios, then by 2030-31, every person in this country will be contributing $1,970 every year. And again, if you have a family of 4, your tax burden as a family of 4 is $8,000 or close to it. That's what you have to pay to service the debt of Canada, the federal government. Now, we can talk about all of these different values and how some of them will move and some of them will get better and some of them will get worse. I think we can say that lots of the expected budgetary balances here, based on the way our government has been spending, will get worse. I don't know that this number will be met in this year. If we're talking about spending $8,000 for a family of 4 just on debt service, we're losing a lot with our tax dollars. And just to give you an idea of what we're losing today, let me show you the detailed expense outlook. This is a chart that, again, the PBO put out. It's in billions of dollars, and these are the expenses. We can see the revenue here, and by the way, it's not all personal tax, so you're not exactly spending all of that money yourself personally. There's some corporate and other things that go in to what we make. But, you know, for example, GST, that's essentially being offset by the dollars we're spending on debt servicing. Right now, the interest we're paying is being offset in 2025-26. It won't be in 2030-31. So, you know, there's a number of ways you can slice these dollar amounts and say, okay, that's paying for it, this isn't, whatever. Let's get an idea of what we could be spending this money on. This is Appendix D. This is the detailed expense outlook. You can kind of see what the government is mostly spending your money on, because the federal taxes that you send is your money. And I think we're not kind of recognizing that as a society right now. It really bothers me. So I've zoomed out a little bit just to make a really clear point. This is the per year expected expense that the federal government spends. This is the money they spend to send provinces the money for healthcare, our public healthcare system. Way down here are the values for public debt charges. And we can see that this year, the public debt charges will exceed the amount of money the federal government is spending on our healthcare. That is an incredibly clear example of how this public debt charge is killing us. We could essentially be spending double on our healthcare. That money is going to interest. Your money is going to interest, and it's going to go to interest more and more. And you are going to owe more and more as a taxpayer. And eventually this comes to a point where you and I cannot afford it. And I would say we're past that point right now.